Hey everyone, CW Music Reviews here. I'm CWD and this is going to be a music review of the new Schoolboy Q album, Blank Face LP. Before we get started, and I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible, I apologize for the hiatus that I invoked myself in, kind of unexpectedly in a way. I've just been trying to balance work and having interests in other things, namely video gaming and maybe some socializing every now and again. After that, I did have concerts to go to, and it was my birthday month, so quite a bit has kind of drew me away from doing album reviews as of late. So for July, the plan is to get this review recorded, 2 more, and pretty much edit a grand total of 6 reviews. Probably won't do NET for July since there was only 4 albums that I listened to that I thought, yeah, I'm probably gonna have to NET this thing. After that, I'm gonna hit August running, gonna get a shitload of stuff listened to and reviewed, and try to get this channel back on track since I got really lazy for July. So on that note, let's commence with this review in particular. Schoolboy Q is a West Coast rapper, member of Black Hippie and TDE, and this is his latest full-length album, I believe his 4th. I caught on to Schoolboy Q around the time a good chunk of people have when he dropped his 3rd album, Oxymoron. It's a good album, I still have my CE copy of it. Essentially it showed a lot of eccentricity and charisma that I certainly enjoyed quite a bit. Add to that, Schoolboy demonstrated quite a bit of self-awareness and conceptuality to what it is he was talking about with that album. Pretty much him being this borderline sociopathic individual for the sake of trying to make it in the rap game and trying to feed his daughter. It rings similar to Eminem, but I think the influence isn't so overt that it interferes with the quality of the music. It doesn't ring off as completely unoriginal. I actually didn't realize the parallels between both Schoolboy and Eminem until I've listened to this new album. And I think it works for the better for this entire record. If anything, this is actually probably my favorite hip-hop album of the year, at least so far anyway. This album's about 17 tracks in length, close to 80 minutes, if not just 74 minutes. So it's a bit lengthy. There's definitely tracks here that I think should have been shredded out completely. Namely because they don't really add that much to the conceptual nature of this album, because this is definitely his most conceptual record to date, and these few tracks here kinda create speed bumps in what it is Schoolboy is trying to go for. And I'm gonna go through these because these are, coincidentally, my lowlights for the record. They're not bad tracks with the exception of maybe one, but they're certainly not tracks that I look forward to listening to every time I put on this album. First and foremost, that part. It's grown on me quite a bit since I initially heard the single, but it still lacks in a lot. The beat's pretty cool. It's nice and spacey, nice and druggy, it's slow. There's the occasional kind of aggressive and really booming variation that occurs on the track that I dig. But the thing about this track is that the hook is just so out there and spacey and just kinda maybe forced that it has very little catchiness. I'm glad this song is doing particularly well in the charts given the music video, but regardless, it's still not a track that I dig. Especially given how asinine Kanye is on this track. Walking living legend, I feel like Kobe. Beggars can't be choosers, bitch, this ain't Chipotle. Wifey gonna kill me, she the female OJ. It's just so out there and ridiculous. And maybe he did that on purpose, but regardless, it doesn't really equate to that enjoyable of a track. I'm not sure if my issue with this track is because Kanye is just so overtly him, or the fact that Schoolboy Q is just not writing the verses as strongly as he could. Let me get the track Whatever You Want, which kind of a poppy track, and it works to its detriment, unfortunately, especially given how synthetic Candice Pillai's vocal delivery is all over this track. Schoolboy isn't really talking about anything that significant to the record, just I'm this rich rap guy, I can buy you all sorts of clothes and just whatever you want. The track By Any Means, which has a really dark and really out there beat, I like the kind of really sinister bass synth that's on this track. There's actually quite a bit of sinister bass synth on this album, as well as some like really off-kilter and dark beats. But the track is just so hook heavy. I do like Kendrick's background vocals on the hook, but the hook is just so prominent that it leaves very little in terms of just substance in terms of the verses, or at least memorability. But by far my least favorite track on the album, hands down, Overtime. I didn't even need to do research to know that this track solely exists to replicate the success of Studio off of his previous album. The thing about this track is that this Studio lacks. Studio was actually a good song. Maybe lyrically underdeveloped, but still a good song. That underdevelopedness had a point to it. This, on the other hand, is just too spacey, too out there for me to pay attention to, especially given the lazy and really insignificant hook Miguel delivers on this track. I wanna fuck right now, I wanna fuck right now, I wanna fuck right now. Justine Skye's vocal delivery is pretty cool, and Schoolboy's verse isn't as bad as maybe I would imply it to be. But yeah, this track doesn't do much for me. So that's the tracks that I'm not really feeling all that much. But the highlights? There's quite a lot of them. One thing I do have to mention throughout this album, for the most part, the production is actually pretty fantastic. There's elements of boom bap here, some soul, and maybe elements of funk. There's even, like, I dare say, some horrorcore incorporated into this album. In which case, I think he does channel his inner Marshall Mathers LP with this album, but again, I think that works more to its benefit. Like the opening track, Torch, where he seems to be channeling in like his inner eccentric and menacing persona that he kind of hinted at with Oxymoron, pretty much stating that he's been fucked up since he came out the cervix. Oh god. The beat on this track is nice and cavernous and really dark and nocturnal. I do like the really menacing synth that's on this track. The horrorcore influence also comes up on Groovy Tony Eddie Kane, especially given how just really dark and menacing, again, this track in particular is. It's just darker than Torch, and it's pretty much my favorite track on the record. Especially the beat switch that comes up after the halfway mark that kind of channels the more boom bap-ish side of this album. And this hook. Schoolboy's delivery on this album is just phenomenal. The way he just goes from semi-monotone and cold-blooded and stone-faced and just kind of crescendoing into this really raspy and just borderline shout-ish type delivery every time the hook comes up. It's quite remarkable. The descriptions he has for maybe this Groovy Tony character, as well as just the mayhem he's just describing overall, is pretty invigorating to listen to. Especially when it gets to the second half where it just builds and builds in intensity over time. This kind of marriage of production and vocal delivery and lyricism continues on with tracks like Ride Out, as well as Dope Dealer, as he's talking about the gritty side of his personality. He's not really talking about anything deep per se, just a more polarizing split than Oxymoron did have between human being and menacing and just cold-blooded gangbanger of some sort. It's also demonstrated on Straight Ballin', which again, maybe a bit hook heavy than it needs to be, but the raspiness and just outright craziness and just overall aggressiveness that this hook displays is pretty remarkable. Straight ballin' like a bitch! But alternatively, there are sides to this album that shows, once again, like a human aspect behind this blank face concept he's trying to go for. This idea that he needs to put on a blank face to do what he feels is necessary in order to obtain the level of wealth and fame and just survive, pretty much, that he needs to acquire. Like the track Black Thoughts, where he seems to know the dangers and the overall outright ruin that the act of gang violence can lead to eventually. The same can go for John Muir, and the track Never Change seems to be about, I guess, him noting that people are hating on another individual's success, when simultaneously these individuals have done absolutely nothing with their lives, period, nor do they have aspirations to do anything with their life, period. And the track Tookie Knows Too, the closing track, seems to note the end of this persona, or the potential end of this blank-faced persona that he goes for. One moment he's out just gang-banging, he's just out doing all this stuff that he's noted that he feels like he needs to do, and now he's in a van, cuffs in his arm, and cracks in his knuckles. So I definitely dig the concept here. The fact that this blank face needs to be put on, and underneath he's definitely worried about the state of the society he's in, as well as his own moral state, as he's doing all this heinous stuff in order to gain this kind of survival and success. What do these features add to this album? Quite a bit, really, for the most part. The track Groovy Tony Eddie Kane has Jada Kiss on the latter half of the track, and he adds quite a bit of soul and rasp. Of course, if you're gonna get a song about gangbanging, namely the track Ride Out, you gotta get Vince Staples here, and he definitely does his thing. And the track Dope Dealer, man, E40 killed it here. I just love how he has this line, and then he just adds a little addendum that I love a lot. I like the couple of lines where he's like, toss you in the garbage can, the trash. And at one point there's like an addendum when he's talking about being in a war zone eating Dominoes. I also want to note that Dope Dealer also has Metro Boomin and Southside of all people on this track that really adds to a nice, moody, and really dark trap banger. Really does make Dope Dealer one of my favorite tracks on the record. The track Big Body actually has credits from Tyler the Creator on production, as well as the Dog Pound adding to a feature, and it kind of reminds me of some like old school West Coast shit this track does. It's an aggressive track, but there's something fun about it that really does make me remind me of the West Coast. If anything, I think this is what YG was trying to go for with his new album, but unfortunately it didn't work for an entire project. The track Know You're Wrong actually has recent TDE signee Lance Skywalker on this track, and he definitely adds quite a bit of character to this track, especially when it like switches into this Flying Lotus inspired bass synth quadruplets that goes on that I thought was kind of weird, but it grew on me quite a bit. The flows from there, the flows that Schoolboy delivers on that track just escalate from there, and it's a good track. But I think my favorite guest vocalist on this entire record is Anderson .Paak. He does have like an uncredited feature on Torch, which is weird to uncredit him for, especially his hook on that track. Look at my yard, look at my block, look at my zip code! But he has his own straight up verse on the title track, Blank Face, which actually reminds me a lot of the opening track, and actually has a lot of parallels to that track. And it's really moving the way he's just going off and rapping on this track, just so passionately about, I guess, the realities of life as you grew up within this environment that he finds himself in. If there is one rapper that I am the most proud of this year, if there's one hip-hop artist I am proud of this year, it is definitely Anderson .Paak. Malibu, one of my favorite albums of the year, has only came out like 7 months ago, if that, and he's grown so much within that time. It's quite remarkable. So yeah, overall, I do dig this album quite a bit. Again, this is probably going to go down as my favorite hip-hop album of the year so far, and I'm definitely going to be looking forward to what Schoolboy Q is going to go for next, especially if it's going to be as conceptual, if not more conceptual than this. He had a chance to solidify my fandom of both TDE and Black Hippie in general, and he succeeded. If you're into West Coast hip-hop, if you're into maybe some early Eminem, since there's quite a bit of horrorcore in this record, if you've been like invested in TDE so far, if you like Kendrick Lamar, if you like Absol and J-Rock, you'll definitely want to give this a try. Maybe a handful of tracks that I'm not that crazy about, but the bulk of the record itself is quite remarkable and has me intrigued. This album is a plus 2.5 out of plus 3. I would have dug it a lot more if maybe it shredded some of the meat off. But really that's it. A good chunk of the tracks here I dig quite a bit, and I can't ask for anything more. Did you give this album a listen? What did you think of it? Did you like this album? Did you dislike this album? What was your reasoning for that? And what should I consider listening to and reviewing next? CWD Music Reviews here, signing off.